Okay, this is just a very basic introduction to Shiny apps. And I'm assuming you have the latest version of RStudio and latest version of R loaded, because there have been a little bit of a change. You'll know if you go here and we're going to insert a file, if it has Shiny Web app there, you're okay. If not, then you need to go update your programs, re-download. Well, anyway, I'm going to insert a Shiny Web app, and it's going to ask me for an application name. Now I'm going to use the single file approach. So I'm just going to call that app. If you do a multiple file, you'll have to have two files here, one with the UI for user interface and one for server. The single file puts those all in one file. And then you need to browse to a place where you're going to put your thing. And so I went desktop to Shiny and then example 1. There's nothing in there now, but I'm going to select that folder. And in that folder, I'm going to create this app. It's always going to be named R. What you have to do is create a folder first and then browse to the folder where you're going to put it and give it this name and then create. And this is the default Shiny Web app that you'll get every time. And you should start here and then just build off of this. You'll have to, like some commands like library shiny and the UI here equals shiny U fluid page, those will never change. And you can maybe guess here that when we're going to have a title panel and give it a title, that will change for the particular applications you have. And what you have here, the basic structure is you have your user interface. And in this case, what it's saying is I'm going to have a title panel. I'm going to have a title to this too, Old Faithful Geyser Data. This is just a data set that's on R. It has to do with the eruptions of the geyser in Yellowstone, or the Old Faithful geyser. There's a lot of other geysers there as well. And then we're going to have here a sidebar layout. That means that in the layout of our web page, or I'm going to look at it in the viewer here on RStudio, we're going to have a sidebar panel with slider input. Bins is the name I'm going to give to this slider. And then there's going to be some type stuff. It's going to say number of bins. And I'm going to start with minimum 1, maximum 50, and the starting value of 30. And that's just the way that slider input command is set up. And then I'm going to have a main panel where I'm going to plot the output. And the output I'm going to plot is going to be called distribution plot. So this first part just sets up what the user interface is going to look like. In this case, just a title panel, a slider input, and a plot. Then the next thing you have is the second part of this. And if you had saved this as two things, that first part would have been a program, and then you have to switch windows to get to the other part where the server is. Again, this first part doesn't change. And then you have to have an output statement, and then dist plot that's the same name that I had up here in my user interface. And then render plot is a basic command in the Shiny app. And now here's just some code to generate a histogram. And Faithful is just the Old Faithful data set comes with R. And then here's how we're going to define the bins. And then here's just your basic histogram statement. Hist x breaks equal bins, color, border, and that kind of thing. And so you have that segment of the code. And then this last part just says run it. And one of the things you might have noticed is that when I inserted that, it came up here and gave me a button that says run app. And so I can just run the app now. And you can see it all comes out in the viewer window. And all this is an app that looks at what's the effect on a histogram of changing the number of bins that you have in the histogram. So if you go to a few bins, it might look like that. And if you go up here, it's got a different kind of thing. And you can see different features show up depending on the number of bins that you have. And so that was the purpose of that app. And there's our title, and there's our side panel, and there's the histogram that we drew based on the number of bins. And you can see in the histogram command that we had. Remember, our slider input was bins, and then we came down to here we defined what bins were, and then we said our breaks was equal to bins. So that's whenever we change this, the bins changes to meet what we have there. And that's just the basic introduction to, and basically just running the app that's already in there. Of course, you'll need to, for whatever your app is, decide what you want it to look like and look at the different commands that are available to put in there. It doesn't have to be slider output, and they can have different kinds of graphs and things, and it can get a lot more complicated than this. But that's just a basic app that you can look at to get a sense of how the Shiny app works.